Welcome back. You're watching the Dr. Selma B Show. It's March and Women's Month, and you and I have the gift of recognizing and celebrating the women in our lives. To you and all my phenomenal women, I'm sending you a huge high five and reminding you to remain authentic and keep doing what you're doing. If this is your first time joining, get comfortable, sit back and enjoy your coffee and tea. And thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. I appreciate all the ways that you show Dr. B the love by liking and subscribing to the channel. Ready? Let's get right into it. I received a few comments from viewers who noted how much they valued the talk on purpose, passion, and our most recent show on transformations. One of my viewers seized the opportunity and reached out to me by phone. She's new to the role of the principalship and in a school outside of her community. Not only was she in a new role, but she was also working in a new physical location and with new supervisors. And so she felt like the ground was slipping from under her. How could she be the authority in this space? And she was getting in her own way and continuously struggling with feeling unworthy and not able to find her voice in meetings or making tough decisions and even coaching her staff. After talking with her, I made a shift in today's topic and decided I wanted us to spend some time today investigating the imposter syndrome. Now, you may not have ever heard about the imposter phenomenon or the imposter syndrome. Let's have some fun. Take a look at this picture and tell me what you notice. First, the word syndrome makes us all panic, especially in today's climate. The imposter syndrome is not an incurable disease. In this case, it refers to a pattern that emerges from our actions, behaviors, and emotions, and in reality, our mind and beliefs about ourselves. The imposter syndrome refers to someone who feels fraudulent and unworthy in their professional space, school, and perhaps also their personal life. Is there a relationship that doesn't make you feel like your true self? If so, it's time to re-examine things and consider whether you're experiencing feelings of inauthenticity. When you feel like you're faking it, you operate from the mindset that everyone else in the room is more capable and far more deserving than you. And as a result, panic sets in. You get in your own way. And all of these negative impressions of self compound, and there you are, all dressed up as an imposter. As we celebrate Women's Month, I want to honor women researchers who coined the term the imposter phenomenon. Dr. Pauline Rose Clance, a psychologist and author, and her colleague, Dr. Suzanne Imes. Dr. Clance's body of work emerged as she was working with undergraduates. She noticed that her students had feelings of fraud about their own admission to school. And she found that those feelings were also in her. When I first found this research, I had an aha moment. I get this. Then I dug a little deeper because I wanted to learn more and thought that this would help my teachers and others, included you, my beloved. They discovered that you can have a sense of self-doubt no matter your race, gender, language, or cultural background. That's a good finding. It makes me feel better to know that it's only natural to feel that way at times. However, This made me think about feeling unworthy in other ways. What happens when you have the added pressures from family or religious norms that can also fuel silence and tell you to stay in your place? Recently, Mr. Yoshiro Mori, former president of Japan and head of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, complained that meetings tended to drag on because competitive women in attendance talked too much. Now, he's a grandfather, and we would hope that he'd have a little capacity for extending some room for someone else. According to multiple accounts and the press he received, he was uncomfortable having to listen to women. He wasn't interested in creating a mental space for dissenting views, especially from women. They were physically at the table, but in reality not truly welcomed. This story highlights an important gender gap, certainly in Japan, where women are not necessarily sought after for leadership positions in politics, the boardroom, and certainly not sports. The challenge of carrying the weight of being authentic is now heavier when sexism, racism, and all of the isms are now part of the equation. Self-doubt comes from all the societal enticements. Beloved, people are constantly pushing out curated social media images about what they do or wear. These images don't reflect who these people truly are on the inside. We are consuming images that are scripted, and these fake images that are pushed upon us about living polished and fabulous lives. The standards of beauty are about what's on the outer shell, something unachievable and not true to the experience of being human. Beloved, be careful if you're measuring yourself and defining your worth by the media. I'm very proud of the Duchess Meghan Markle, who recently took the risk to share her story with Oprah. A monarchy who put out the retouched images of her and her prince, the beautiful cars, the photos at the charity events, the tea with the queen, and all the designer clothes. All of those fairy tale images are pushed out for our consumption. She was a new wife, mother, and yes, in a new environment. Yet the people around her attempted to silence her and expected her to only be that trophy. She noted that she had every intention of carrying out her duty and often did feel inadequate in her new role. How could anyone live up to that fairy tale image and not have it affect them in some way? I want you to be careful about those images as you define your worth and those feelings of inauthenticity. I'm going to give you some steps about finding your why in a bit, but let me also take a moment to talk about the imposter syndrome and how it shows up for our boys and especially also people of color. How does the imposter phenomenon play out with people of color and especially boys and young men of color? If you're a future doctoral student, this topic may be one that calls you. An interesting dissertation may be the intersection of race, the imposter phenomenon, and mainstream culture. If, for example, you're a person of color in a professional setting, and you find yourself in spaces where you're the only person of color, the only black woman, the only black man, then you're well aware that in this space, you may or may not feel like you can thrive. W.E.B. Du Bois, a scholar, wrote the book titled The Souls of Black Folk. And in that, he grappled with how blacks had to navigate in a white culture. Today, children of color are forced to code switch. They have to code switch to safely walk their own neighborhood and streets. When they arrive in school, they often code switch again to feel like if they belong in an academic setting. And in a work setting, the message is that they have to code switch to make others feel comfortable with who they are. In order to navigate through the structural and deep-rooted racism, as a person of color, remember, not only in America, you can certainly go back to the interview of Meghan and Harry, the message is that the world wants you to become an imposter. But this is the Dr. B show, and it's important to talk about who you are, to know who you are, and to know who's showing up in that room. In my company, we first start with a mask activity with educators. It's a tool to get them to look at themselves and look at their relationships with others. We ask them to ask, who do they share with the world and who do you hide? It works just to start to build a conversation about our relationships with ourselves and our relationships with others. And with our children and with our young boys, the research says that boys, especially in academic settings, choose to opt out, that they don't want to be seen as if they're competing academically. They'd rather continue to keep the role of the imposter. So as we work with educators, we create a space that we want to send a message to our boys and also to our young girls that who they are and that they need to know themselves and who shows up matters. Now let's get back to that why. How do you get out of your own way when and if the imposter shows up? Step 1. Tell me your why. Beloved, let's start with your why. Why are you in the room? Is your why strong enough to not allow yourself to be distracted by what others bring to the table or by what others think of you? Take a breath and focus. In my episode about purpose, I talked openly about how doing purposeful work is not the same as living your purpose. Are you speaking and working towards your mission? Are you in the room to be part of the solution and create change? Stop worrying about the politics of how you might be heard. Stop waiting your turn. Stop worrying about what the other person might say in response to your ideas. Beloved, take ownership. You are at the table because you are deserving. You've done the work, and you are there to choose how it is that you want to engage others. You may feel at times that you're silent, but know that you know when to contribute and how to contribute, and most importantly, that your contributions matter. Take ownership. You are at the table. You are deserving. What do you bring to the table? Let's take another look at that photo that we had from the beginning of the show. The reality is that the imposter is on the team, but doesn't know that his or her contributions to the team matter, and is choosing not to fully participate. If you are in a space with peers, then you have to realize that your contributions are valuable and needed. Teamwork requires you to know your role and, most importantly, do your job. And when you shy away and not show up emotionally, and you're not only failing yourself, but you're also failing the members of your team. Lean towards your teammate and create a space for them to learn from you and also to lean on you as needed. Let's talk about step 2. I call this one post and burn. I learned this from one of my mentors. To do this, you're going to need 2 color Post-its. Here's a strategy that my doctoral mentor, Dr. David Stone, offered to me at an early stage in my career. As a new math person, I would meet him to do pure math problems, which was challenging at the time for me to understand. It was new territory, and the imposter would show up. I would second guess myself and my approach to problem solving. He said to me one day, "You have an internal fascist." I was like, "A what?" Yes, he called my imposter an internal fascist, which I was allowing to take over my mind. He gave me a Post-it and instructed me that every time I hear her in my head, or if I said out loud, "I don't know," or "I can't do this," All I had to do was just write it down on the Post-it and keep moving. It allowed me to learn about how to really accept productive struggle, which is part of learning math, part of problem solving, and in reality, part of any challenge that's new to us in life. The first time I did this, I had yellow Post-its everywhere. This activity I'd like to suggest to you because it helps you just to become more aware. And isn't that what today's show is all about? Awareness. Now, the first time you do this, I want you to collect the Post-its, put them in a plate, and set them to flame. That's right, burn them, step on them, scream, drown them. In other words, let it go and claim your victory. You are talented. You are worthy. Now, the next time you do this Post-it activity, for every negative note you write, I want you to use the other color Post-it, and I'd like you to write a positive one about yourself. Now, sometimes when I do this with my students and also with my educators, they say, oh, I can only come up with one comment. Well, that's okay. Then write that positive comment a dozen times if you need to. But the most important thing here is that you're shifting your mind and you're letting go of those feelings of fraudulent and feeling unworthy and those feelings of being panicked. Let's talk about step 3, journaling. That lesson to put away my internal fascist helped me grow and certainly drop the imposter, although at the time I didn't know about this imposter syndrome. But there it was. And when I started my company, I wanted to help other educators and ultimately our students and children to grow. I thought a lot about this. How can I extend my personal lessons into the professional space? How could I build tools that would work for a group of teachers, a school, an entire district, and now hopefully you? As a company, partner with Legacy, our work centers on a pedagogy of voice and confidence. Writing and journaling is a vehicle to develop voice, and it helps both our students and teachers. With journaling, we can develop and expand on the idea with the Post-it notes. I love to journal, which is why we have developed our Warrior Journal series. The self-doubt and self-criticism on those Post-it notes are really grudges we're bearing about ourselves. And what I'm suggesting to you is to use a journal to reflect on your habits of mind, to also be honest about where you are in your profession and what you need to grow. In our Warrior Journal, we have a 14-day guide, but you don't have to write on the consecutive days because we're all busy with so many things and adulting. I journal with my morning breakfast sometimes and even with my evening glass of wine. Here's a journal question you can get started with today or tomorrow. Who are the members of your inner circle? In what ways do they contribute to helping you develop your strength, stability, and belief in yourself? Also, when you reflect on the imposter syndrome, do you see yourself differently? Do you notice any impact that others have had on you? Have they helped you or prevented you from glowing? Become aware of your feelings and thoughts. People who meditate talk about watching these thoughts, and this puts any negative thoughts outside of you. And this way you can see that these negative thoughts do not need to control you. Negative forces such as other people also do not need to control you. If you want to learn more about our journals, and guess what? You can get your free journal to help you get started by emailing me directly. Let me know that you subscribe to the channel, and I will send you an email with our free Inspirational Warrior Guide. Let's talk about step 4, feedback. Certainly, yes, journaling develops the habit of mind of reflection, which provides you a safe space to assess your personal growth and talk about your journey. But these feelings of fraud and inauthenticity does show up in your friendships and relationships because you're most likely voicing your feelings of self-doubt out loud to the point where you may feel that your friends do not want to hear your complaints anymore. Are you ready for feedback? Feedback helps you to quiet the negative voices. Most importantly, it tells you what you are doing well and concretely tells you what you need to improve upon. This is the work of pushing off that imposter. If you can, do this with grace and a good laugh too. Go away, internal fascist you. I don't need that anymore. In our work with educators, we call this exercise glows and grows. You want to glow as well as grow. Now here's the important part. The grows can't be random. The grow comments have to be specific to a skill and concrete steps for what you need to do to get yourself to the next level. Let's talk a little bit about step 5. Rely on your experience and your expertise. When you rely on your experience and expertise, the only way to trust yourself is to learn from failures and successes. It takes pressure to make a diamond, and you want to learn what you are truly made of. Why not go for it? It will help you to learn your strengths and your weaknesses. It will also help you to realize that sometimes when things go wrong, it is out of your control. In our climate with all the video calls, I recently had an issue where I was pushing out our legacy Ed News live on YouTube, and everything was going wrong, no matter what I tried. The volume on my computer would not work. I had a panel guest who was giving up his time for the interview. I was about to give way to the imposter and tell myself, you don't need to be doing this. I'm failing at this, and why didn't I just hand it over to a member of my team? I stopped, took a breath, and I turned off the computer. Guess what? When I turned back on the computer, everything worked magically. You see, the failure was not my failure, but a technical issue. Relying on my expertise allows you, and it will also allow me to move on with grace and grow with what we now know. When the feelings of being incapable and as if you're not keeping it 100 show up, remember these strategies. Step 1, tell me your why. Step 2, post it and burn it. Step 3, take time to journal and reflect on your grows as well as your glows. Step 4, seek out feedback. And step 5, rely on your experience and your expertise. Most importantly, I want you to not define yourself by all the curated images on social media. Know that you deserve to be in that room and at that table. Believe in your inner voice, and if you're feeling inadequate, then put in the work. Remember to glow and grow with grace. Beloved, you are unique, and you are enough, and you have to love yourself. Now we have come to a new segment of the Dr. Selma B Show called Planning Your Inspiration. Why? Because I love you. I love you for welcoming me into your home on a Sunday morning and allowing me to be a part of the MNN family, and you being a part of our community of warriors. Sundays are the best because we get to breathe, feed our spirit and our mind. In this segment, I want to invite you to plan and share your inspiration with me. I'm asking you to think about the small things that you can do today or next Sunday or during the week that will inspire you. Today, I plan on curling up on the couch with a book called Your Beautiful Heart by Scruggs. Lauren was faced with a disfiguring accident, and now she goes on this journey where she discovers that beauty is way more than skin deep. Beauty comes from the inside and from a higher power. It's also a book written in form of journal and reflections. So I'm inviting you to plan your inspiration and to share your inspiration with me. Once again, thank you for liking and subscribing to our channel. And saying thanks is not the same as giving thanks. And I give thanks for you.